the information.
All right, off day, everyone. Chris Barnett, KUAM News, here with Frank Mansell from the Federal Emergency Management. Is it authority or agency, Frank?
It's agency, Federal Emergency Management Agency.
Right, and so FEMA does have boots on the ground here in Guam. And I guess, Frank, we'll just start at the beginning. Major disaster declarations for both Guam and the CNMI have been approved by President Trump. What does that mean for Guam and the CNMI moving forward?
Well, it's a major disaster declaration, and it's unique in that there are a number of programs within the category of a major disaster declaration. So they're programs that you can switch on and off depending on the need. Guam and the CNMI declaration is not unlike other states that have received major disaster declarations. And not all 50 states and territories have received major disaster declarations yet. Those that have not received disaster declarations are in what's called an emergency declaration, which provides something which is called emergency protective measures. So that covers the costs, whatever it takes to protect life and property. But once that is in place, the governor requests from the president a major disaster declaration, and that it includes a number of things that the government has to justify. So in this particular case, not everything was fully justified, but it is open to amendment. So the program as it exists and was approved by the president includes such things as emergency protective measures, as we discussed. It opens up the opportunity for the Army reserves to be paid for at 100% by the federal government under what's called Title 32. Then it offers disaster unemployment, as well as the other program is crisis counseling. So those are the programs that are turned on right now. And it also offers what's called direct federal assistance. So any assistance that we can offer that can come from another department, that's turned on and available. But primarily it's disaster unemployment and crisis counseling, as well as the National Guard.
I guess we can just go and unpack each of those items individually. What can you tell us first about the ability to activate the reserves, right?
Correct. So the National Guard is generally paid for at the 75-25% rate. Under Title 32, that allows the governor or the state government or the territorial government to have complete control over the activities of the Guard, and the federal government will pay for that fee.
And just to clear this up, Frank, are we talking about the Guam National Guard, or are we talking about the Army Reserves?
You've got me there. Normally it would be National Guard, and I don't know that you do. If you don't have a National Guard on site, I'll get that for you. But forgive me for not knowing that.
Let's go to the disaster unemployment assistance.
Mm-hmm.
What can you tell us about that?
Well, generally that's a program. Again, on the mainland, it is a program where there's an arrangement where the state will pay a portion of the disaster unemployment benefits and the federal will pay 75%. In Guam's instance, and we're watching Guam with interest because there is no unemployment program that exists on the islands, is there?
No. So
I understand unemployment insurance.
Right, we don't, and so I know that our governor has inked a deal with the feds to kind of stand up pandemic unemployment assistance. But is that a program that's separate from what FEMA's offering?
I would suggest that this is new territory for both us and for the government of Guam. So we're being very We're taking this one step at a time in the water, and we are working on memorandums of agreement with the territory and the governor, and we're doing everything to accommodate this with the Department of Labor.
Right.
FEMA's role is to coordinate the federal departments as best they can, and it's kind of, if you look at us, we're kind of like a conductor.
Right.
So we're trying to pull levers and make things happen, and through one central source, which would be us at this point.
Is there a timeline? Because you know, we're 3 weeks into this you know, quarantine and the social isolation measures you know, declared by the governor. So already we're starting to see workers who've been adversely affected by COVID-19, whether it be through layoffs, furloughs, or hours reductions. I mean, they're hitting the first pay period without a paycheck. And since we don't have any assistance available locally, and the governor has signed that agreement for pandemic unemployment assistance, we feel like every you know, second that ticks by is another second where people are finding themselves more and more in need of assistance. So we haven't got a clear answer from the administration on when the pandemic unemployment assistance will be available. Can you offer any clarity on any type of unemployment assistance and a timeline on when we can start the application process, and then maybe a timeline also on when we'll start to see checks in the hands of displaced workers?
That is something that I don't know the status of the memorandum of agreements, and it's my understanding that there are some hurdles that have to be jumped over. As soon as I can provide you anything, it'll likely be about the same time that the governor would have her information.
In what ways, Frank, could you tell us, as the government of Guam or the governor reached out to FEMA in terms of assistance aside from monetary?
I have not seen the paperwork on that. I know that, as I said, the governor has every opportunity and every right to take any of the programs that we have and request an amendment to our programs. This is what was granted under the presidential declaration, but it's not uncommon for an appeal to take place. There are two major types of assistance. One is called public assistance, which oddly enough is not for the public. It means that would be for maybe government-owned utilities, such as water treatment plants, electric plants, sewage treatment, that sort of thing. That's called public assistance. And that runs categories A through G. And each of those categories has a separate meaning and a separate coverage. And the one that's been approved right now is category B, which is emergency protective measures. So if there's extra policing needed, or if there's anything that's required from the fire service for security or whatever, that's covered under category B. Category A is not applicable in this case because it would apply for debris cleanup. You would see category A turned on in case of following a hurricane or a forest fire, things like that. So that's public assistance. The other is individual assistance. And you probably have seen individual assistance following typhoons, such as Yutu or Amankut, where there are programs available to individuals to apply for grants and food and things like that. Those have not been turned on yet. So the only thing that we've got available to the governor right now is the disaster employment and the crisis counseling. So as those new requests come in, we'll look at them.
Is disaster unemployment, is that an individual assistance, or is that just a lump sum that the government of Guam gets and then they kind of decide how to parse it out?
Well, generally, and again, this is a unique situation in Guam. Generally what happens is the states that we deal with automatically have an unemployment insurance program that they administer. So FEMA just grants the money to them, and then they administer it as they see fit, or as they normally would. But because there's no precedent here, then it's move as fast as we can. We were certainly not trying to delay anything. It's something we just want to make sure that we're clear on.
Right. So you mentioned hurdles. Are these hurdles things that we got to jump over on the local government side, or are they hurdles that you guys need to work with? And what are those hurdles? Can you give us more detail?
Well, the only hurdles I've got is what I heard on the news conference yesterday, and that was that there has to be some forms available that have to be created, because there's no such thing as an unemployment form that's been generated. There has to be that memorandum of agreement as to what the ground rules are going to be. And until we see that, there has to be some accountability. So that's kind of what we're looking for. And it's my understanding that that's where we're at right now. And until we get that, we're in a holding pattern, but that's where we're at.
What about disaster emergency food stamps? Has that been a part of the conversation? Is that something that we're looking at?
Hey, I believe that's been approved. That's part of the program. That's under Housing and Urban Development. I'll call you back if that's not the case, but that's my understanding that is true.
And how's that going to work?
It would basically release the funds to continue the program. That program and the SNAP program has been available in Guam, has it not?
Yeah, it has. Yeah, Frank, and that's where maybe we're just a little bit confused here. So the disaster assistance food stamps, is that going to be for people who are already receiving SNAP program benefits, or is there going to be any type of emergency assistance available to those who have been adversely impacted by COVID-19, but who otherwise wouldn't regularly qualify for food stamps or SNAP benefits?
That's a very good question. I apologize. I do not have the answer. I will research that.
Okay. You said FEMA is the conductor. Are you having daily briefings with the governor? How folded in is the local government and the administration in terms of the FEMA response?
Well, our role is to support the government, and we do have conversations. We're working with the governor's office in developing the request for the disaster. We right now have in person, and they are in constant contact with the state government that way through the Emergency Operations Center. I myself am also on calls with their folks. We've got a 4-member team here on the island. 3 of them live here permanently, and I'm the only one that's not a resident.
Are we going to see an influx of personnel to the island, Frank? I mean, when is that going to happen, and how much of a FEMA presence are we going to see here and in the CNMI?
Well, generally we have because of the size of this disaster, FEMA is not a huge agency, but we have a 4-member team at CNMI, and we've got a 4-member team here. So it comprises a team lead and a planning person who coordinates all of the agency work and the reports. We've got a logistics person that looks after making sure that all goods are made available and distributed accordingly, and again, in conjunction with the state. We don't come in here with, we certainly try and push materials. We do have some prepackaged materials here on site or on the island, and we bring in more as necessary. And then there's my position, which is outreach. So I don't know that there would be a growth, but FEMA is designed to expand and contract as needed. If it turns out that more staff for FEMA are needed, then we will probably send folks out to cover the vacancies required.
Frank, what can you tell us about homeless assistance? Is FEMA involved with, we have a pretty sizable homeless community on Guam. Local government hasn't been able to provide any clarity on plans to shelter these homeless. And we also have had a couple members of the homeless population on Guam test positive for COVID-19. So is FEMA involved in efforts to house the homeless?
No, we're not. And again, this is a common question that occurs whenever we go into a major disaster. We did this in the wildfires in California 2 years in a row, where the requests came to ask us to provide shelter and benefits for the homeless, and that's not within the purview of the Act. Our responsibility carries up to supporting the government, and individually we can't help people that are, we can't change that situation.
Right. So, but what if the local government was to make the ask of, hey, FEMA, we need, X amount of tents, or can we prop up can you assist in propping up a facility, maybe with the Army Corps engineer to kind of house the homeless? I mean, I know you're not doing individual assistance.
Yeah, that would not be out of the realm of possibilities. I think that would be fall under the life-saving and life-sustaining effort under Category B. So if there were requirements, that would be certainly within the purview, and that we would pay for that. So that would be the government's responsibility to do it. We would pay for it or provide whatever was requested.
And so it's up to the local government to make that ask, correct?
It would be up to the local government to assess what its needs are to protect its own population. And then under Category B, we're behind the 100%.
What can you tell us about community-based testing sites? This is something we saw in one of the FEMA updates that came down. Is this a program that is going to be able to be stood up on Guam and the CNMI?
I'll check with that. That's a Health and Human Services initiative, and Health and Human Services, the Guam Health and Human Services folks are coordinating a lot of that effort. So again, I can't tell you in any detail unless you were able to get a hold of somebody from the Department of Public Health and Social Services for Guam.
Right.
They can tell you more about that.
Can you tell us what that program is and what it's designed to do?
I only know what I've seen on the media. I've seen drive-throughs, and I've seen. I understand that there are testing sites here available. I don't know how many have been activated or how many tests are doing a day. I could probably get that off of the Department of Public Health.
Right, but I guess the goal of these community-based testing sites is to bring testing out into the community, and kind of, as we see in jurisdictions that are starting to flatten the curve, it really hinges on the amount of testing that they're doing. So I guess we'll follow up with the Department of Public Health and Social Services. We did ask about it, but I don't think they knew much about it. So any information that you could get on that, we'd greatly appreciate it.
Okay, well, I'll reach back to our folks either at the Emergency Operations Center or one of the government governor's PIOs. Maybe we can get.
Right. So you I know you're here, boots on the ground, but would you say in terms of FEMA assistance, and you guys are still kind of assessing what the situation is here, and is that how would you would describe where the effort is now?
We're collecting information and needs. Sometimes those needs are very obvious, and sometimes they're not. One of the needs, for instance, is we have the Army Corps of Engineers examining, potential off-site medical, portable medical hospitals, where to place them, how they're going to be staffed, who's going to set them up. There's a program where they're looking at potentially converting a hotel into, a healthcare facility. those are programs that are being reviewed right now, and we're doing that not on our own, but we're doing it in conjunction with the local government.
Can you give us any more information on that? Which hotels, which facilities are being considered?
I wish I could. Yeah, we would just be, it wouldn't be appropriate right now to discuss which properties are being looked at, as I know that tours have been done of a couple of sites.
And that's through the
And
Army Corps of Engineers, Frank?
that is correct.
You know, the governor had mentioned something about a barge, you know, a hospital barge. She said that, you know, in conversation with the Army Corps engineer, this was one of the options they were looking at. Is there anything you know about that you can share with us?
I'm not aware of that. I'll put that on my list of things to look for and ask for.
But the Army Corps of Engineers, they're here, right?
Yeah, I believe so, because we've been doing tours.
Nice. Okay. So, Frank, let me get this straight. You flew in repping FEMA, and you're actually being quarantined right now, right?
Yeah, that's correct. It's. I think I was on a disaster back outside of Hurricane Katrina, and the media said we were asked to bug out and go to Dallas from Houston. And the question was asked, why are you abandoning Houston? And the answer is, as we always do, is we listen to the local officials. And, you know, for us to come in here and thumb our nose at the quarantine would put more residents at risk, as well as ourselves at risk. There's no point in contaminating things or putting people at risk unnecessarily. So we're fine with quarantine. We're capable of working from our cars if we have to. But fortunately, I'm here in a hotel room.
Frank, I know disasters are your life. I mean, you've been with FEMA a long time. I'm sure you've seen all kinds of disasters. Have you ever seen anything like COVID-19?
No, COVID-19 is you know, and generally we don't like to compare disasters, but this one is unique in that it starts out on such a large scale. You had pretty much every state and territory given an emergency declaration immediately, and then that evolved, and there's one by one states and territories are applying for major declarations, and the major declarations are not what we normally see. Generally, they're for individuals and they're very short period of time. This is going to be a very long-running disaster, and it's going to take a while to unfold. And no, there's been nothing in my experience that equals this.
And has that taken a toll on you personally, Frank? Because you know, FEMA, you guys go into these places, you're a beacon of hope, and you know, a lot of us out here, I mean, in the media, we don't know what to make of COVID-19. We can't grasp the largeness of it, and I just wonder, with you being a guy that we're all looking to for assistance, is this something that you know you struggle with on a human level?
It's difficult to imagine that people are suffering the way they are, and suffering for a long period of time. And it's not like a tornado or a hurricane where the disaster ends and you deal with the aftermath. This is a rolling aftermath, and you've got to. I'm able to call home and touch base and maintain some sanity, and that's important. But it's more important now because for once in my life, I'm a day ahead of my wife.
And that's gonna be the situation for a while, right? How long are you planning on being out here, Frank?
We're out here. FEMA will not leave until generally a lot of questions revolve around when is FEMA going to leave. Well, FEMA doesn't leave until the job is done. There will be a point, you know, depending on how long this runs, where we will switch out. I'll be replaced by somebody else, but generally FEMA does not go away until we're done. And there's no budget per se. Generally, people say, well, how much money do we have to spend, or how big is the budget? There is no budget on this or on any disaster. We go in there and execute until we are finished.
Right. That's another thing when you talk about trying to, wrap our mind around when this is finished. We don't have a finish line in sight, right?
We do not. I wish we did, but I don't think that this is the type of disaster that any of us have faced before. And certainly we are still, we still have people back in the office working on the wildfires from California in 2017. There are a lot of programs, a lot of issues there that we're still resolving. Now, we physically aren't there, but we are dealing with individuals every single day on their concerns and their problems. So we have not left that disaster. Although physically we're not there, we are definitely in touch with folks and politicians and government officials as needed.
Can you tell the people of Guam and the people of CNMI that, things are going to be okay and that you're here to help? What would your message be to the people of the islands?
Well, we are here to bring forth every possible resource we can that the federal government offers. And sometimes that will happen quickly and visibly. Sometimes it'll happen in the background, such as disaster unemployment, where we're working with the government to try and make programs work. It's not our job to come in. Are you still with me?
I'm here.
I'm sorry, I had a phone call. Okay, so it's not our job to come in and take over. It's our job to come in and support, and we don't get any credit. We don't get any bonuses by shortchanging anybody the resources that we have. So we're here for the duration.
Well, thank you, Frank. People are looking to FEMA and the federal government really for just so much help, and we appreciate you being here. And hopefully you got that list of things I was asking about, and we'd appreciate it if you could run down that info for us, Frank.
I will, and I'll be available. I'm not going anywhere, and you can call me anytime.
Right. Okay. And you have a good quarantine. When are you getting out of quarantine?
Tomorrow.
All right. So we're going to have a little we're going to do a little quorum-free conversation with you, Frank.
Well, yeah, I was going to go down and get a Starbucks, but apparently there's no Starbucks here.
We're working on it. Maybe you guys can bring it over with assistance.
Well, I tell you what, my wife is sending a care package.
Okay, well, good for you. Hey, Frank, thank you so much, and thanks for being here.
Okay, and like I say, I'll follow up on these questions and provide you some answers, and whenever you need it, I'll provide maybe some subject matter experts if it's better appropriate.
Well, appreciate that, Frank. You take it easy. God bless you. Be safe.
Okay.
And wash your hands.
Thank you, and thank you very much.
Okay, we'll see you.